Consider this your trigger warning. The following program is strictly satire and is not meant to be taken seriously. So don't get all butthurt, you liberal snowflakes, just because we skewer your sacred cows and expose all your lies and hypocrisy. Truth hurts, and so does satire. So grab a drink, pull up a chair, and enjoy the show.
Well, here we are. We're back on the Prepared Mind channel, folks. Everyone, welcome, one and all to the preparedmind.club, YouTube, X, subscribestar.com. Did we say X? With Facebook, BitChute, Rumble, you name it. It has been a nice weekend. I got a little bit of rest. I hope you did too, because this coming week, my friends, is going to have new spectacular levels of stupid, dangerous, and SHTF-related events. Now, as promised, or maybe as discussed, I don't know if it was a promise, last week, I got to back up the bus on Sunday Night Live. If you've been here before, you know you've got to be a subscriber to get in the comments. I need thumbs up from everybody. Now, thumbs up if you hate me. I don't give a shit. Just thumbs up everything. And of course, share the internet address. Hit the share button down below. And if you want to get on the screen, this is your show, Sunday Night Live. That's why it's called The Zoo, because it gets all over the place. It's crazy and wild and fun. And Super Chat donations, there's a button right up there. We also have Pen Pal, PayPals, Venmo, and CashApp down below. And any Super Chat donation above $50 and up buys a Glenlivet 18-year single malt scotch. There's a big difference between a 10 and a 12 when you move up to the 15. And when you move up to 18, it is even smoother. And anyways, last week's show was so good. We discussed the 18, and here it is. I want to start today's show off with a $52.43 Super Chat donation from none other than Chin Music. And this is the one, Chin. We're going to start the show with you. And here's to you. Semper Fi. Keep on training. Be strong. Be intelligent. Be wise. Be prepared. So much smoother. Woo! Anyways. Chin Music starts with this. He says, I do not know where to start or finish today. All I know is this. The modern Democrat Party is finished. This has many different angles, but I would like to focus on the result of their own labyrinth of lies crumbling. Their own labyrinth of lies crumbling. They created a fake majority out of paid protests, media censored by omission, and massive amounts of fake bots on the web. Now that the backlash over Charlie Kirk's death has begun, and they have been getting fired coast to coast, the reality that they aren't the majority is sinking in. That's only going to make them more desperate and dangerous. All right. I have a hard time arguing with any of those points. Before the show, Uman and I discussed some of what Chin Music was going on over there. Hard to argue with that. But I think that, yes, these local groups that want to commit acts of violence, I think of them as terror cells in Seattle, Los Angeles. Well, apparently Ogden and Salt Lake City, Utah. Yes, right? Down in Phoenix, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Chicago, everywhere there's these micro cells populated with people who are the consummate victims in their own little world. What are they called? One of the groups, they even had a name, Zizians. What a ridiculous name, but they make up names for themselves. But they really felt like they were being genocided. And at the same time, they also feel like they're the majority. They also claim to have moral superiority. It's quite interesting, moral superiority. And it does make them desperate and dangerous, as Chin Music says. It's going to make them more desperate as they lose ground, as they lose support. Now, Charlie Kirk, while he was alive, had, I think, 1.5 million followers. These are people that subscribed to him. Like I said, I enjoyed listening to his work. I gave him a 9 out of 10. He was great. But since his unfortunate assassination, his social media strength has increased tenfold, folks, 1,000%. And I'm not, it's not hyperbole. It's just that many people decided, what was he saying that was so bad? Because I only hear a nice, polite guy, not screaming and yelling and calling anyone names, right? So now the radical left cells are going to feel more threatened, more desperate, and I think they'll become more dangerous. Recall, if you will, that there were transgender killers shooting up churches, schools, church schools. They were going after people in their homes. They were going after shopping malls and also nightclubs. Wow. Desperate and dangerous, yes. Interestingly, also, these little cells, because they're geographically isolated from one another, they don't seem to have a central command point. It would make sense that if you were, let's just say, a deep state group that needed a hand or cherry pick operatives, you could go to any one of these cells and start communicating with them. Find out who is most radical, who is most dangerous and most desperate, and then meet with them, work with them, and in my opinion, use them either as the legitimate primary active or as a, as we like to say, a patsy. One way or the other, or both. Because Crooks appeared to be both. He appeared to be both. He was both a shooter and a patsy. And so we have this. But desperate and dangerous, no doubts. No doubts. Now, as far as the Democrats go, I know Chin said, they're so intent on making people believe them that, they push and push and push this incredible amount of violence on everyone. And violent talk and violent rhetoric and violent belief systems. It's almost like they whip themselves into a frenzy. I think they are desperate. I think they are dangerous. And I think they are being used because the politicians in Washington, D.C., the state governors, as well as state legislators, as well as the mainstream media, have not backed off on their rhetoric. In fact, they've doubled down in many, 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 many cases, and we'll be talking about them off and on. They haven't backed down. Instead, they're pointing the finger at Republicans and saying, you guys did this, right? They've even adopted some meme phrases that Republicans have used, or conservatives, if you will, or patriots, if you will, or libertarians, if you will, saying we are not the same. But this is, let me throw up the big red flag on this one. It just says, stop. Are you guys that fucking stupid? The answer, of course, is yes. But they say, you guys will cry for Charlie Kirk, but you won't for St. George Floyd. We're not the same. Well, it's because they're not the same. One was a very polite, nice Christian guy who had his own opinions and is actually allowed to say them and share them. And people were so interested that he would have millions of people listen to him while he politely debated people and let them bring up the topics, set the tone, push it in a particular direction, and he would answer on that topic and that tone from that direction and try and share his opinion. He was good at it. It's one of the best, if not the best. He was a charismatic, likable fellow. What was George Floyd? He was a fucking thug who had a rap sheet a mile long, and we know about a lot of it. But the day he lost his life, he was passing off counterfeit bills. He took enough fentanyl to kill a horse, which eventually killed him. He was resisting arrest. And in all truth, the police were very polite with him. They just kind of kneeled on him and held him. They weren't jumping up and down on him. But in any event, yeah, there's a big difference. But they're trying to say, yeah, you see, you guys are a bunch of hypocrites. Well, nobody's perfect, especially me, especially conservatives. We're not perfect. But there's a difference. There's a big difference, right, between a dog and a fucking wolf. There's a difference between a house cat and a freaking lion. There's a big difference, right, between a Yugo car and a Ferrari, right? You as Uman's been reminding me lately, apples and apples, John, not apples and oranges. So, we got to compare. You can't compare those things. In any event, I have some topics that work, I guess I'll say, hand in hand with Chin's comments. But before I do that, we'll come back to this because I know we're going to revisit it. There's the Charlie Kirk situation. If we put Charlie in the middle, all around it, we have different topics that tie into it because everyone is weighed in, and he weighed in on everything. Whether we're talking about, big government, small government, whether we talk about our national and state governments or foreign governments, whether we're talking about social issues or criminality or even the economy and education. All of these things, right, have an angle at Charlie Kirk and gives us a chance to talk about it. But this is something that everyone is hyper focused on now, so it's hard to get away from it. In any event, let us continue. We have a second super chat donation coming from Darc. And Darcy, I'd like to thank you for this 18-year Glenn Fiddick. It's quite a bit different. Than Glenn Levitt. I find Glenn Fiddick to be a little more peaty because they burn peat to malt the grains. In any event, Darcy T, salut, cheers, semper fi, and thank you for your great support. Smooth as a baby's bottom. All righty. Woo! So Darcy says, good evening, John. And by extension, everyone else. Says, I know that most topics of discussion for tonight's zoo will be centered around Charlie Kirk. However, I'd like to bring something else up this evening. A few days ago on Fox News, one of the commentators, Brian Kilmeade, intimated that mentally ill homeless people should be killed, and it could be done by involuntary lethal injection. This was in response to the Ukrainian woman who was stabbed to death in a train recently, that would be the Carolinas. He later apologized for his callous comments, but I believe we're seeing a glimpse of what is to come. They always start with the most vulnerable and then move on to other undesirables. Now, I know that when it comes to undesirables and a mass killing by a very strong-armed nation that is run by a strongman dictator, we think of the Nazis. We think of Adolf Hitler. He put people in prison camps. People died in prison/work camps. But the communists in the Soviet Union and the communists in China were much more efficient at it than the Nazis. Much more efficient, folks. Or maybe you could say it's not a question of efficiency because, hell, Germans are very efficient. Maybe it was that their level of callousness in communist regimes is much higher. Much, much higher. Right? Let me give you some examples. For Hitler to come to power, he was elected as Chancellor of Germany, and he became the Führer, the big boss. When the Reichstag burned, the Congress building burned, And he just said, screw it, I'll just be a dictator. Now, in China, in Russia, let's just use Russia. There was no election to elect communists into power. The Bolsheviks, which were a communist youths organized, they murdered the Tsar and his family and bayoneted his daughters. A little different than an election, don't you think? And then they went around the country killing people they did not like, namely Christians. Lots of Christians died, folks. Tens of millions of Christians died. Well, why am I pointing to the Christians? Well, communism, folks, doesn't have its roots in Christianity. It has its roots in Judaism. Most people don't realize that. The Bolsheviks practiced their version of Judaism. And it's very powerful and very painful. Now, the Chinese don't practice Judaism. They're Chinese. I think they're Taoists. But in any event, communists just completely abandon all morality, and they seek to serve only themselves. Is that starting to sound like the people that are in charge of Western nations now? How they have these factions that don't care about morality, decency, tradition, culture, laws. They do what serves their needs at the moment. But back to Darc, if I can. This idea from this guy on the TV show that we need to take mentally ill homeless people and euthanize them, kill them, give them lethal injection. It's beyond callous. I think I can apologize. I can see how in the heat of the moment, pissed off, upset, emotionally disturbed, you say shit like that, people are going to yell at you. Oh yeah, cancel culture. We'll get back to that in a little bit, I'm sure. I don't want this guy canceled. I want him to keep explaining himself. What do you mean? Have you heard that from any people in politics? Have you heard it from the government? Have you heard it from rich philanthropist assholes like Bill Gates, who wants to involuntarily, lethally inject the mentally ill? Who have we heard that from? Share it. But I get it. There are so many mentally ill people. We do not have nut houses anymore. We don't have sanitariums anymore. And they represent a group of people as large to the general population as the prison population. We would need a complete different institutional system to keep them housed, keep them fed, clothed, cared for, sheltered, and administered by. That's more government, more taxes. Yeah, that's a problem with that, and that's why nobody wants to touch that. Just let them live in the bushes; they'll be fine. But it's not helping. In fact, with so many other problems around us, it's becoming almost a lifestyle for some of these people. And anyway, I agree that we're seeing a glimpse of what, I don't know if it is to come or what could be coming our way. The most vulnerable and the weakest, or undesirables if you wish, are the ones who suffer the most. Now, who is the undesirable? Who is vulnerable? Right? Those are the questions, right? The transgenders think they're the most vulnerable. The political left thinks that Democrats are the most undesirable. And it was well over 4 years ago that Hillary called us deplorables, regular people, hardworking, tax-paying Americans who aren't nuts, who aren't violent, who aren't communists. They called us, irredeemable, right? Talk about marginalizing the people paying for the show. Anyways, this is a glimpse of what is to come. We are not seeing a de-escalation as a consequence of Charlie Kirk's killing. We're seeing an escalation. We're seeing an even further bifurcation, an even further building of psychological barriers to keep everyone else's ideas away. In other words, most of the world is continuing to isolate themselves intellectually, identify groups they don't like, and recommend their extermination, removal, etc. And as far as conservatives go, we want that same thing. We want the illegals out. They're undesirable. We want them out. We're not talking about euthanizing them. I don't want them in prison in America because I don't want to fucking pay for them. But we want them out. We want them gone. We want their crime gone. We want their drugs gone. We want their overall culture of crime gone. So that's similar to the Democrats because they don't have a right to be here. They don't share anything in common with us, culture, traditions, religion, etc. Which brings us to the next group of people we would call undesirables. That would be the Muslims. They're undesirable. Are they or are they not? The reason I would say they are undesirable is because they come here with no skills, no education. They come here from a culture that revels in violence, rape, murder, and criminality. Their moral or ethical standpoint is we're here to take this country, and folks, they've said it numerous times, not just the street guys, but the top clerics, the imams, or if you want to call them priests. So we can kind of think about how they are, right? The priests, that some of them have money and it's funneled in through the Muslim Brotherhood. But these are undesirables because they don't share anything and they allow themselves to lie. There's no moral objection to lying because they're supposed to lie to us, to trick us, to take over our country. Once again, they're trying to take our country from us, label us as the bad people, label us as the undesirables, infidel, right? They don't call us Christians, they call us infidels, which is less than them. They're Muslims and we're infidels, right? Which has a religious and secular connotation that we don't belong, we're not good enough, we're second class. So they want to get rid of us. It's this, and this brings me, and I hope we got some good questions coming. We got some good topics coming from you guys because I think we can hit all over the place. Uman, keep me updated. I know we got. Oh, by the way, yes, Uman is here. He's in the background. He's doing a great job there. Always does a great job. We have a lot of stuff. This thing about Christianity, though, and our belief system and our country and our culture and our world. What are we looking at in our country? We've got, I'm going to break it into 4 basic groups. There's Christians. There's Muslims. There are atheists, or shall we say, people who decide what their morality is on a daily basis because there's no root or foundation for them. And the fourth is the Israelis, or the people of Jewish faith, right? All of the other people like to point at Charlie Kirk, and say he was full of hatred and bigotry. He was a homophobe, a transphobe, an Islamophobe, right? He was starting to pick on Israel and examine the genocide or mass killings in Gaza, the destruction of Gaza as a city, and the expansionism of the Israeli government to take all of Palestine and call it their own. He was pointing to that, right? So they're looking and yelling and blaming and not liking Charlie. But he's not saying kill anyone. He's not saying violently oppose anyone. He's not saying burn their buildings down. He's not saying destroy them. He's just speaking from a Christian perspective. If you go to an atheist who hates Christians, what do they want to do? They want to eliminate us. They want to kill us. They say so in their own words. Not all of them, of course, but the most radical amongst them, these little cells we talk about, who have been told they're victims, who have been told that they're being picked on, who've been told that they're being genocided. So they have a violent response, right? I don't believe transgenders are Christians. They can't be. I don't believe a lot of things, folks, but there's one group. They don't like Christianity, and Christianity isn't saying kill them. Let's talk about illegal aliens, right? We don't want to kill them. We just want them out of the country. When it comes to Muslims, do I say, or anyone in the Christian community say, let's kill them all? No, we don't. We just want them out of the country. This is our country, not theirs. And then you've got the Israelis. What do they say? Well, first off, the Muslims say they're superior to us and we're infidels. And so they want to kill us and remove us. The Israelis believe God gave them the whole planet, and therefore the rest of us serve them. Kind of a ridiculous statement. Well, to us it's ridiculous. To them it's real, and they act out on that. You see, so everyone is acting against the Christians, and the Christians are not acting against anyone. We're just talking. We're sharing ideas. It's part of our culture, part of our tradition, part of our laws. We're allowed to talk, and we're allowed to listen. We're allowed to think for ourselves and then repeat whatever we want. Every one of these other groups does not. Muslims, they want to shut you up. The atheists want to shut you up. And definitely Israel's the same way. They've passed or proposed some more laws to make it illegal to criticize Israel in many different ways. Why? It's not America. It's certainly not American virtue or value. Certainly not part of our American culture to hold another culture above us, to hold another state, nation above us, to be submissive and subservient to another nation, culture, or religion. Very interesting world we live in, folks. Expect more wild craziness. Ooh, man, let's do it. Let's get into the crowd. Who's up next? What are we going to talk about? And it is, well, it's Ooh, man. He says, now there are some on the right begging for censorship over this. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Yeah, there are some conservatives. Right? We had the one guy who says, we need to get rid of these undesirables and give them a shot and kill them, right? Yeah, that's a move by more conservative thinking that's not on par with American values. So when they say, I want to euthanize people, no. And then some are saying, well, you can't say whatever you want. Well, why not? Well, it makes people mad. We've got to stop that. The government needs to step in and tell us what is allowable and what is not. Really? Since when does government have, well, not just a monopoly, but any moral ground to stand on for which they can point to something and say, this is the way it ought to be done, and there's no better or other way to do it, right? The two major political parties, the only thing they can agree on is fighting each other and screwing us out of our money, overspending and going to war whenever they can, opening the border up, allowing non-Americans in and screwing us over. I mean, that they agree on quite a bit, but they can't agree on what is and is not allowed to be said. Because, well, they're untrustworthy. They're awful people in government. They're awful people. You should hear some of the stupid shit they're saying. But yeah, some Republicans or some conservatives want to start censorship. Just as some of them are saying, we need gun control. No, we don't. In fact, the more of this nonsense that happens, whether we're talking about free speech, the First Amendment, or guns, the Second Amendment, the more of this craziness goes on, the more inclined I'm to say, I'm going to say what I want, and I'm going to protect myself. And no law by some stinking, lying sack of shit, sellout, bribed, extorted, and controlled by money politicians is going to tell me what I can and can't do. The government, under the Constitution, is a well-established institution that is supposed to be our servant, not the other way around. So C says, I want these nut jobs to keep talking so we know who they are. Damn right. I don't want to silence Jasmine Crockett. In fact, I want her to talk more. She makes a great case. She makes a great case of stupid and what we need to learn from. Nancy Pelosi, sure. Dollar store Hakeem Jeffries, Dollar store Obama, you bet. All of these people need to keep talking. The trannies, too. Keep telling us how you're going to kill us all. Keep being violent. Because that's the only way to get to the root of the problem, is see where the root is. Not just the symptoms, right? But what is the disease? Free speech is not the disease. Free speech is how we're learning what they think. And if they want to use guns to express their thoughts, then it tells us they are mentally deranged, that they're criminal. You see, the gun is just an expression or a tool to use of expression for a mental problem from these people. And what do you mean, John? Is the Marine Corps and the Army, or are they crazy because they use guns? No, that's political will, right? That's protection. That's self-defense. It's supposed to be, but maybe these nut jobs, as C talks about, nut jobs, that's their problem. They think they're justified in doing what they're doing. We're going to continue to deal with this as we go, folks. If you've got something to say, super chat button right up there. Let's get some on the screen. Mr. Uman, who's up next on the Prepared Mind channel? And it is Mineral Water with a $15 super chat. He says, hey, Ron Foster, Prepper Fiction, and non-70 plus books published support. All right, folks. Mineral Water says we need to go. Is that for Amazon? We need to go on Amazon. There we go. John would interview Ron Foster. Google has many interviews, etc. See if John would interview Ron. I wouldn't mind interviewing people. Before I do, though, I want to be familiar with their work. I probably want to have a private conversation with them because I do not know Ron Foster. But I appreciate that. I'd like to get back into interviewing. I had a good time last week when we brought on Uman, Vaughn, the Arizona Unplugged, and also Kaz, the Italian Hillbilly. That was a great discussion, and an interview is great. It's always difficult, though, getting the timing. So, doing these shows, there's a lot of production time that goes into it. So having full-time jobs as well as doing this is a bit tricky, but I'd like that. I would really like that. Thank you very much, Mineral Water. Perhaps we can get some contact information sent to Uman, and we can see if we can make these things start to happen. I was listening to Tom Luongo the last couple of days, Luongo, Tom Luongo. And, he and others just are marvelous people to interview and talk. And we've had some big guests on in the past and had a lot of fun with them. But we'll get there. Mr. Uman, who is up next on the Prepared Mind channel? We've got Nancy Keg checking in with a $20 super chat. She says, your choice, your topic choice again, John. Semper Fi to the Prepared Mind family, and thanks for being here. You're very welcome, Nancy. It's for me, it's a challenge to just address topics. I am not an academically trained political or geopolitical commentator. I'm just a regular guy. A lot of times it becomes overwhelming. And a lot of times I go, what could I do better with my time? But I really believe that my time is really well spent here with you guys for both camaraderie as well as education, to make sure I stay grounded and centered, and for me to help other people realize you need food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. You need a plan, because all of these things we talk about are starting to affect us on an individual basis. It's not that, they dropped a bomb in that country, or there was an election over there, or there's some infighting in Washington. It's every city, every state, Washington, D.C., and every country around the world. It's every social group and sub-social group and subculture all fighting. And it's not just one coast or the other. It's every city. And we're starting to see this. So yeah, I think it's really critical, really important that we all stay awake, stay informed. And so this helps inspire me to do that for myself and for my family. It's very important. Thank you, Nancy. Let's pick a topic. How about cancel culture? That's a fun one. I remember years ago, we were all just minding our own business. You could talk about anything you wanted. Ooman says they thought it was all fun and games when they were doxing and cancel culturing the right, the Republicans, the conservatives. And he says he has no sympathy. Yeah, right. These people came out years and years ago and decided if they don't like us and what we say, they're going to find out who we are and then release it to others, called doxing, which is, by the way, illegal, right? At least it's a social media faux pas and will get you in trouble for releasing private individuals or private information about individuals. But they did it. And they would go to your work. They would call your work. They would email human resources. They would try shitting on people, getting them fired. Here we are today. These people are celebrating assassination, gleefully celebrating, writing some very insensitive things. And I thought, okay, that's how we're going to play the game then. If you say insensitive things about me and try destroying my life, I'm going to say some insensitive things about you. I'll play that game all day long. But they don't like it now because they're going out in social media and plastering their stupidity everywhere. And now they're being not doxxed, but they're being found. And their work is being called and they're being cancel cultured. And they are throwing a massive hissy fit. They do. These communists wanted to use social media to hurt America First patriots like you, and it is now backfiring on them. It's backfiring big time. An example is, well, there's examples all over, but one that I haven't seen an answer yet for is that the teacher, well, he's been suspended. I think this guy should be fired. In fact, I think traumatizing children should be considered a crime. Traumatizing children should be a crime. This teacher forced his 10-year-old students to watch over and over and over again in classroom the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and told these same students Charlie deserved to be murdered. Only a sick communist fuck, folks, would glorify assassination to children. Kind of like these teachers like to sexually groom their children. It kills me. We used to be on the personal level. There would be people who would want me fired, and they tried multiple times, folks, claiming I was sexually inappropriate at work. I was sexually harassing people. And I would ask HR, what exactly did I do? Well, John, you were talking to some attractive women. And I was like, well, there are attractive people out there, and I'm supposed to talk to them. Well, it made other people feel uncomfortable. I was like, well, it sounds like they have a problem. Why am I the problem? Well, they felt uncomfortable in the workplace, and they felt that you were having some sort of flirtatiousness with these girls, and therefore they felt uncomfortable, and that's sexual harassment. And I said, so anyone can make anything up they want at any time. And that's how this cancel culture works. All they have to do is act offended, and then ascribe to it whatever they want and ruin us. When they tried it, and they failed repeatedly. Now, I know some people did get fired by these leftist lunatics, but hey, this is the world we live in. A nurse. Okay, Charlie Kirk was assassinated on September 10th. And the next day at work, at a hospital, a physician, which means a doctor, someone who's supposed to have an incredible amount of education, which you would think would indicate some level of intellectual discourse above that of a potato. A doctor was talking to, I believe, staff and maybe even a couple of patients, laughing and talking about how Charlie Kirk deserved it. And so the nurse complained, and guess what happened? They did not fire the doctor, they fired her. Well, it's Sunday night. This happened Friday. She's already suing the shit out of him. But you would think that the insensitivity, the awful rudeness, the callousness of the doctor would have got him canceled. But it shows, and I think this is a really important factor we're going to get into. It shows how deep-seated the problems in this country are. So remember when I talked about these little fruitcake groups all over the country, right? They've got their little, let's call them terror cells that they're building. They're not the only extremists, but they're the only extremists who are out there acting violently. I know Antifa does. I know BLM does as well. And I've got some stories on them as well. But what is empowering them and allowing them to operate and continue to operate is if this is the wacko, violent, radical Democrats, there is a group this big that allows them. That would be the jobs they have: human resources, doctors, nurses, teachers, administrators, government operators. The Department of Defense is full of people that were crapping all over Charlie Kirk, and now they're busted. Now they're in trouble. Now they're going to be fired. Now they're being reprimanded. You know, it's not that Charlie is Saint Charlie, right? But it's coming, folks. This is right now we have a battle of words and a battle of wills, and it's a battle for intellectual superiority. It's a battle for the moral high ground, right? And cancel culture is where we finally are at on the Republican side. We're finally there. But we're learning as these people get canceled or exposed or talked about or shared, we're learning just how many of them are. And I've said in the past, and I say it again, it doesn't matter if you live in a heavy-duty Republican area like I do. There's still 4 out of 10 will be Democrats. Other areas are 50-50, 50% Democrats. Other areas are Democrat strongholds, 60% or 70% Democrats, and a very small minority of Republican America First types. And every one of these Democrats, whether they're in the minority, it's a tie, or they have the majority, they think and they support these ideas that these radical little violent terror cells have. But they express themselves differently. Rather than taking up a gun, they talk shit about people. They spread their thoughts. And I'm not against stopping them. Like it was said earlier, I want them to continue so we know who they are. So people wake up and realize how dangerous they are. That they like this violence. That they support this violence. That they want this violence and they want a lot more of it. Oh, yes. Okay, let's do this. Oh, man, let's move on if we shall. We're over 300 people live. I want everyone to share the internet address. Do it, please. Hit the thumbs up. It's very important to give approval to the video so that social media promotes it a little better. Once again, I like to think we talk about things on the Prepared Mind a little differently than others. Redneck Roughneck checks in and says, I got a good laugh out of it. Now they're crying First Amendment, but where were them cries when conservative voices were and still are being stifled? Exactly. Social media is having a hard time figuring out stuff. But they love to say that liberals, left-wingers, these fruitcakes, they're just fine. They're protected. Remember that whole protected class? Interesting. I don't hear about Christians going to transgender bars and shooting them up, killing people en masse. But we do hear the exact opposite, right? Interesting. Yep. I've got a lot of, well, you can say good laughs, or I find a lot of humor in it. whether you think of it as stoic or sarcastic or, just whatever kind of humor you want to call it, right? Just from laughing at these people for being morons. Yeah. Okay, let us continue if we shall. Thank you, Redneck Roughneck. I don't know. Where do we go here? Big Dan the Man has checked in. He says, with a $5 super chat. And folks, your super chat donations keep this channel going. They keep the lights on. They keep the studio going. They keep the scotch flowing. And Big Dan says, the part of their rhetoric I laugh at were all the Nazis trying to destroy their democracy. I think they have that backwards as to their own actions. Well, that's a very interesting perspective, but it's true. It really is. They call us Nazis, but what tactics do they use? They bring violence. They attack people when they're outnumbered, when they're weak, when they're old, when they're kids. Right? Wasn't that what the Nazis did with their Hitler Youth? Their brown shirts, right? Their Gestapo and SS, right? Their democracy is the bureaucracy. Their democracy is the deep state. Their democracy is centralized elite world government. They don't understand that they themselves, these dumbass Democrats, are undesirable to their masters. The same way the Bolsheviks ultimately became a tool and then a disposable tool to the communists. Unbelievable. Yep. They have it backwards. But what do they know? It's also interesting that many of these groups that fought and show up and riot, they're paid. They're literally paid. Right? They're paid. I want to touch on this topic, and this will probably set you guys off. Thank you, Big Dan. I want to talk about Israel real quick. Remember when those terrorists, Hamas terrorists, remember when they were blown up by explosive cell phones? Cell phones that were created, well, they had to be designed, then they had to be manufactured. They had to install explosives in them. They still had to function as a phone, function for text, function for messaging. They're still smartphones, but they had explosives in them. And these explosive cell phones were distributed to the terrorists. And then they blew up a shit pile of terrorists. Do you remember how they bragged about how complex that project was, how difficult it was, how expensive it was, and how patient the Israelis were to get these explosive phones into and being used by terror groups. And they use them to assassinate their enemies everywhere systematically. And then they bragged about how smart and how clever they were. Remember that? I mean, hands down, that was one hell of a way to take care of your enemy. But when to face the accusations that they were involved with the Charlie Kirk assassination, they pretend like that's not what they do. That's not what they're capable of. Right? Charlie was starting to expose the apparent slaughter of everyone in Gaza. And, Saint Charlie Kirk is basically what they're calling him in Israel now. They're hiding behind the posters of Charlie saying, we would never do that. But we were told that they are very clever and smart and patient, and that they'll take care of anyone that opposes them anytime, however they want. So which story is it? Right? And I don't blame just Mossad, folks, or the CIA or the FBI or MI6 or Interpol or anything. I oppose and point to all of them. I think they're all involved at some level. Right? We learned years ago about this thing called the 5 Eyes. Remember the 5 Eyes? I'd never heard about that in my life until they started talking about it. Well, it was the United States government working in concert with England, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, plus America. That's the Five Eyes. They were having the other four spy on us, so the government of the United States of America wouldn't be violating the Fourth and Fifth Amendments of the Constitution, right? Obtaining information from people in America without a warrant. So they had other countries do it for them, then supply them with the information. So don't tell me all of these groups don't work together and know what their fucking plans are, and that there's maybe even possible splinter factions within each. Crazy business, folks. The world of intrigue and spycraft, statecraft, wild world. Okay, Mr. Who-Man, let's keep going. We got RM125 Hooligan with a $9.99 super chat donation. And he says, John, a girlfriend has to go to St. Louis tomorrow. Apparently, she has her own Glock. Would you make her take that or a tiny belt buckle 22 mag just in case it's a work training deal? Well, I have to do the preliminary and obligatory caveats. Mr. Hooligan, do not recommend to your girlfriend to do anything illegal or unlawful. Make sure she follows all rules, regulations, etc., having to do with firearms and self-protection and preservation. Now, having said that, providing she can do all of this legally, I would tell her to take both her Glock and the 22 mag belt buckle, because a lot of women carry their handgun in their purse and not on their waist, their hip, their back, etc. And sometimes you can set your purse down. Oops, I left it in my room. I left it in the car. I left it in the convention hall. I know you shouldn't do that, but it happens from time to time. So if it can be legally done with both, then hell, do both. As far as the belt buckle 22 Magnum, you've got one or two shots in that, I think. So, any protection is better than no protection, as I see it. But the more, the merrier. I don't like St. Louis. I've only been there once. To me, it was a very nasty town, but I've been to other towns that are just as nasty. Just as nasty. Been to Oakland, been to Jacksonville, and been to DC, and been to lots of different places that were just ugly, downright dirty. St. Louis is just another one of those. Just did not like the way that town felt. In any event, Mr. Hooligan, I think I won't say more importantly, but how about just as importantly, and this rule goes for me as well as everyone else, is do not let your guard down. Do not turn your back on potential threats. And who is a potential threat? Anybody you do not know. And I don't mean even workers that you know, but you don't know their politics because maybe they're good at hiding it. Be careful who you trust and don't trust. Don't turn your back on someone you don't know, don't trust. And always remember that responding to someone's aggressive movements is much, much more difficult than being the aggressor. So you can't just pull your weapon out at someone who's 20 feet away because you don't like the look of them, because you fear they may do something. You're only allowed to defend yourself when you are under threat of great bodily harm and injury or death. You see, so a criminal has the advantage, a big advantage. They can get within just a foot of you walking by on the street, and you don't know they're your personal enemy or personal threat until they put hands on you or assault you or stab you in the frickin' neck or shoot you through the frickin' neck up close. So if someone reveals, right, you need to be very quick. You need to be ready, and you need to, of course, be aware. Now, making yourself a less vulnerable target is easier to do if you're a man than if you're a woman, because men are stronger than women and they're easier to victimize. If you're older, same story. They may see me as he's just that 55-year-old doof, right? I'm going to take him, right? As opposed to someone who's in their 20s or 30s, right? So we all have something that others are going to think makes us an easy target. So you have to counter that with your alertness, your situational awareness. Yes, you have to look at a room and you have to profile it. You don't have to tell everybody what you think, but you have to profile it. One time I was in North Carolina, and I met an Army E7, and we went to lunch at a restaurant, and he just had a good laugh. He goes, "I'm watching what you do, John. You do everything I do. You came in, you sat, you observed the door, you looked for exits, right? You looked for threats." I was like, well, it's just what I do, you know. It was really a funny thing. He was a hell of a nice guy. In any event, Mr. Hooligan, thank you, and thank you. Now, I want to tell everybody, if you've got something to say, super chat button's right up there. We'll get you on the screen, make you famous, whatever you want to talk about. The future, the past, current events, totally unassociated things, right? To the topics we've already shared. But I want to talk about the Democrats. I want to talk about the Democrats and how they're going to move against us in government regulation, as well as through their operatives on the street. I want to start with the Democrats are going to now try and get Kash Patel fired. They're going to move against him. The Congress has taken a shot at him. They're going to have congressional hearings this week. And that's right, the FBI director, Kash Patel, is going to be in the frying pan. Well, why? Well, his own agents sat on evidence for hours and hours before sending it to Washington, D.C. What they're trying to make hay over is, well, this guy got loose. This Charlie Kirk killer got loose, and you couldn't find him, and you guys did a terrible job. Well, it was his own agents. But I have to say, this is what happens when you share power and share authority with Democrats. You can't work together. They will lie. They will cheat. They will steal. They will shit on you. They will make you look incompetent. And then they'll try and get you fired or removed. And that's what they're doing with Kash Patel. Didn't he say he was going to dismantle the FBI? Didn't he say he was going to fire them all and turn it into a museum? Well, he made the threat and then he didn't do it. And this is exactly what happens when you share power and authority with people that don't like you. They'll do everything they can to undermine Kash Patel. And from our side, I don't like Kash Patel at all, because he said he would get the Epstein list out, because he said he would fire all the rogue agents. Instead, he's promoting rogue agents that arrested Republicans who were innocent of anything other than standing around going, why are we being shot at by cops with rubber bullets and tear gas canisters and flashbang grenades? Why are we being batoned by these cops? So, Kash Patel, chickens come home to roost, dumbass. And I say expect more violence, not as a consequence. Not as a consequence of anything you have done, but as a consequence of those in power and authority who help psychologically, morally justify the violent actions of those who want to see you dead. And I'm going to speak directly here about Jasmine Get Ho Crockett. Expect more violence, not less. She said, and get this is right after the Charlie Kirk assassination. She said she is not necessarily encouraging her supporters to violently attack Republicans after the Charlie Kirk assassination. That's right, folks. She is not necessarily encouraging more violence. In the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination, basically she's saying she is encouraging her supporters to commit acts of violence. Right? By saying, I'm not necessarily encouraging anyone, is the same way if everyone goes, you're not necessarily encouraging us to be nice. You're not right. It's word games, folks. Fucking word games. So even now, in fact, at this moment, she won't even pretend to be a decent human being. Instead, she's going to use the situation and all of the very, shall we say, tender, inflamed, sensitive nerves that people have. Instead, she's going to use her violent, nasty, criminal mentality to encourage more. So for the left-wing dipshits, she's going to stomp on their nerves and tell them, I'm not necessarily telling you don't hurt any more Republicans. And as far as Republicans go, who are very hurt and upset over this very and it is extremely disturbing assassination because it was public, because it was a popular figure, because he was a very nice, personally nice, charismatic type guy. Everyone feels like they have been stomped on by Jasmine Crockett as well. And I bet that nasty, filthy, ghetto rag of a human is happy about that because she can hurt people. She can hurt people and she feels good about it. She wants more of it. What they need is to destroy this country. And they're going to do everything they can to make that happen. Mr. Uman, let's have some more fun. Who's up next? Folks, you got something to say? Super chat button right up there will get you on the screen, guaranteed. And your super chats, of course, keep the lights on, pay for my scotch, spam, tuna fish, etc. Get prepared. Now, this is Mighty Mouse's girlfriend checking in. And she says, Charlie Kirk was representative of a healthy family man. Is that why that professional hit was made on him, taking his life away? Okay, Mighty Mouse. This is an interesting question because you address it not as, was it a foreign nation that didn't like him? The European Union, England? Was it the Muslims or the Israelis? We're being told it's the transgender crowd once again. But you're asking a different kind of question. He was a healthy Christian family man. He was polite. He was courteous. He was intelligent. He was well studied. That's the last thing, folks, anybody in power wants, is for the electorate, or the people, if you will. The last thing they want is somebody who is moral and decent and a family man, especially a Christian who's nice. Right? If they were to assassinate me, people go, John, he's a loudmouth jarhead, always talking shit. He cusses a lot. He drinks scotch. He smokes cigars. He's an awful person, right? He's divorced. Blah, 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 blah. He deserved it. Who in their mind can say Charlie Kirk deserved it? He was a healthy, decent, well-mannered human being. That's exactly what they don't want. Now, believe it or not, there's a lot of information on the internet that says prior to the 1960s, that is the 1950s, 40s, 30s, all the way back to the elimination of slavery in northern cities around the country, the black family unit was as strong and in some cases stronger than the white family unit. They were Christian. They were monogamous. They were hardworking, industrious. Their divorce was lower. This is according to some statistics. And then what happened? Well, the 1960s came about. A bunch of communists, and yes, they were communist folks. A bunch of communists got in here and started rabble-rousing in this country. making people upset, unhappy. And it ended up resulting in, well, the hippie movement, the violent protest movement, race riots. That's right. They started all this racial shit. And guess what? They started shoving black people into white cultures. They started shoving white people into black culture. Not very smart, right? It made a very unhealthy situation and caused all kinds of problems. So they didn't want a healthy black family any more than they didn't want a healthy white family. And so they've torn us all apart, have they not? And they've pitted us against each other as best they can, have they not? And I've got to tell you, every single day I go to work, I meet people of different races and different subcultures in America, and all I get are fucking smiles and laughs and handshakes and high fives and knuckle bumps and good job and everything else. People I've never met in my life just get a big freaking grin on their face and just laugh and shake hands and what can we do to work and help each other? Now, that's my experience where I'm at. Other areas, I guess it's very dangerous. Now, I want to get to the second part of Mighty Mouse Girlfriend's thing here. Is that why a professional hit was made on Charlie? Well, the enemy, whoever they are, whether they were a bunch of small-time, transgender, violent, murderous, atheistic pieces of shit, or you could say Satanist pieces of shit, or were they professionally organized and put together? You're probably wondering what the hell I'm talking about. Well, the reports are that the accused, and I'm still going to call him a patsy. This patsy, who is his boyfriend is a transgender. So he wasn't transgender. He was just butt plugging a transgender guy he lived with. And his group and the place they lived at was reported by witnesses who have now gone in and done interviews and said, yeah, a couple of weeks leading up to the Charlie Kirk assassination, they were being visited by unsavory, unknown type characters. And I'm glad people paid attention and pay attention to these types of fruitcakes, because you can expect more of this. More of this. Could that have been the FBI once again? And the FBI, by the way, is loaded with homosexuals, folks, who do not like Trump or Kash Patel, the Constitution, or America. Every single one of these mass murder shooting type guys, well, the FBI had them on their radar. The FBI contacted them. We still don't have any of the facts about the FBI agents that were working with Thomas Crooks, who is the one who allegedly take the missed headshot on Trump. FBI. Professional hit? Yes. Now, there's some other news out there that's quite interesting, that days prior to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, there was a lot of chatter, and the trans community was telling itself, posting that something big was going to happen. How would some little radical shit stain of a group know that something big was going to happen if all they were some non-professionals? But once again, folks, is this a conspiracy theory? Is this conspiracy fact? Is it a conspiracy idea that we feed little pieces of information in, trying to build a story that's believable? And that's what happens when we are not given the truth. Unfortunately, this is what I do and you do. We all do, is we're like, what information do we have? How can we make it make sense? Because what we're getting from the FBI does not make sense. We're told that this fruitcake shoots Charlie Kirk, stands up, shows his silhouette to the sky, runs across the roof, and somehow during this running disassembled a 30-06 stuffed it in his backpack or down his leg, continued running across the roof, jumped off the roof, landed on the ground about 10 feet down. It was a good jump. Stood up and kept running. And then reassembled a 30-06, which normally it takes special tooling and a bench or a vise to do. Reassembles it and leaves it. Supposedly it was going to be left in a rag or a cloth or a towel or a blanket. Turns out it was left on a cardboard box. In any event, we try and make sense out of this. It doesn't make sense. Uman says there's videos of him throwing the rifle off the roof, so that was disproven. I saw him take a bag and set it in the gutter as he came off the roof. Now you're saying he threw the rifle off the roof? Was it disassembled at that point? It was assembled. It was in one piece. Uman, I'm looking at Uman on a little screen. He's shaking his head. No, John, you dumbass. Yes, John, you're hearing me right. Okay, so he took a complete rifle and threw it off the roof. Uman's going, yes. Yep. And then he ran and continued to run with that rifle. Why is it we have high definition video of everything except the video of this guy? He looks like a fucking Bigfoot. It's fuzzy. It's grainy. He's trying to move. You can't really see too clearly, but yeah, you can make some of this stuff out. So why did they tell us he disassembled it? Why the fuck did they say he stuffed it down his pants? And now, well, yeah, the FBI and the government's lying again because now apparently Uman's saying it's disproven. We saw him throw the rifle off the roof. So again, all they do is disqualify themselves, the government, as a reliable, honorable, truthful source of information about something as important as this. Right? Which story are you telling us, government, so we could at least try and make sense out of what you're telling us? Uman says, fog of war, conflicting stories. Yes. Typically in government, when something happens, they have a government spokesperson. Could be a woman, could be a man, could be a transgender. We never know, especially with sub-transgenders. And I can't see that Adam's apple. Anyways, we're supposed to have a source of reliable information to go to. But how do we end up with a fucking calliope? You like that word, man? Of different stories that are upside down, confused, backwards, different colors. Why do we end up with that? The fog of war, conflicting stories. Some people aren't authorized to speak. They leak information. Some people make shit up. Some people will say, I talked to the government. This is what they said. And then from that point on, everyone goes, the government said. I get it. But I think an unintelligent mind accepts what they're told and shuts up. And then other types of minds, will only hear what they want to hear. They just want confirmation bias. They want to know that what they believe is the only truth. Uman says everyone is looking at it as if he had Secret Service level security. We're talking about Charlie, right? He just had his security team and some local cops. They were not prepared to spot or identify this threat. Charlie Kirk was wearing a bulletproof vest of some sort, was he not? Now, was it plate armor or soft armor? We don't know. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm the opinion guy here, right? He did not have Secret Service level security, except one of the men that was with Trump when Trump was shot appears to be the same guy standing behind Charlie Kirk giving hand signals. Guy looks an awful lot like him, like he was Secret Service. Odd, but he's. Here we go.
Okay, Dan, I'm sorry, I got to chime in here.
Yeah,
that the guy was dressed the same as him. He's a security guy. They got the same kind of build and everything.
No,
that security guy standing next to him.
Haircut, hair, and face.
The guy standing next to him was also reportedly a longtime friend of Charlie's and had been traveling with him for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is like people looking for and seeing shit that is, that looks similar, that feeds their confirmation bias, and they present it as fact, and it's bullshit.
That's what I'm exactly talking about, and you jumped in the middle of my shit. What I'm saying is
I'm sorry, I'm getting like steamed with all this shit.
I
You
know.
know, I mean, there's so much garbage out there. It's been piss. I had to turn it off all weekend. I just couldn't listen to another guy talking about some crazy new theory he came up with based on this little piece of video he took out of this big clip, you know?
Right. Right. Everyone is saying he had Secret Service because this guy looked like him. You couldn't tell the tattoos that he had in Charlie's thing, right? If you could see the arms of the guy with Trump, you could say, yes, he had the same tattoos. That's him. In this case, you couldn't. It was just his head looked the same, his facial expression. Well, security is always very stern-faced, you know.
Yep.
And older
They're
guys, we
black,
tend to have
they're
the
wearing
same
sunglasses, they got their hats on, you know.
Yeah. But everyone's looking at it as if he did. He did not have this level of security. He had a bulletproof vest. It's not a bad idea to have that. But they didn't have drones flying around. They didn't have helicopters. They didn't have police. They didn't have metal detectors.
Yeah, and then also you got some videos circulating about there. You know, the one guy standing to the right of Charlie, I believe. You know, there's a video originally came out where he had his arms crossed, and they're saying that he was making a gun signal with his hand. Now there's a video out there where he actually has a real gun in his hand and he fires and shoots him, even though he's on the right side and hits him on the left side.
Well,
and everybody's believing this garbage, going, "Oh my God, he was shot by the security guy."
Yeah,
there's so much garbage out there. Everybody needs to chill, take a step back, and wait for some things to be sorted through before jumping on every little bit of new supposed bit of information that comes out.
Okay. So because you brought that out, now I have to take the opposite side. You know the magic bullet theory, right?
Sure.
The second bullet that hit John F. Kennedy went through his back, came up, came out his neck, made a turn, went through Governor Connolly's back, through his fucking lung, out his ribs in the front, hit him in the fucking wrist, came out of the fucking wrist, went up in the air, and then turned and nailed him in the leg. And the bullet only had a minor, tiny dent in it. That's the government telling us the truth. So why should I believe a fucking thing they have ever said? And that, I think, is the attitude a lot of people have. It's like, we're not going to get the truth from the government. The more time we give them, they just give us more bullshit.
Yeah, but the more time they give us, the more time you got idiots out on the internet making up all kinds of crazy stories and presenting them as fact.
The term conspiracy theory was popularized by the CIA through their media sources to discredit anyone trying to figure out the JFK assassination and do any research.
Yes.
And so, you know, it became a pejorative term. You're a conspiracy theorist, you and your tinfoil hats. And so I think a lot of people are left. Well, what do I do? Do I believe the government who lies, or do I believe these idiots who just make shit up and they're seeing ghosts everywhere?
But you know what? All these guys that are coming out here and coming out with these crazy ideas and making fake videos and everything else, they're hurting the cause.
Say again?
They're hurting the cause. They're making conspiracy theorists look like a bunch of idiots.
Correct. And what makes you think, Mr. Uman, that isn't the bots out there who are misinformation agents?
These are guys that have been making stupid videos on the internet for years.
Yeah.
You know, they're supposedly preppers and conservatives and patriots and this and that and the other. And they just get, you know what I honestly think it is? I think it's all clickbait, because these guys get paid on X based on how many people click on their videos. And that's the same thing these leftist assholes are doing with all their rage bait clicking or their rage baiting. They're making outrageous statements about Charlie Kirk, and then everybody on our side is going on there and telling them how big of an idiot they are. And every time you do that, you're putting money in their pocket.
Right. Yep. So between the disinformation artists who want their cause hidden and protected and throwing more dirt and shit in the air to confuse everyone, the clickbait artists and bullshit artists, and then people who just want to go in and piss other people off.
Yeah. So their videos get shared, and, you know, on X, they get their impressions and view time and whatever. And everybody that responds to these clowns is just putting money in their pocket.
Right. Yeah.
Now, Corsair followed up with an interesting comment that kind of goes along these lines as well. And if you don't mind, I'd like to put that up real quick.
Let's put it up there. Here's Corsair Trainers with a $10 super chat. And he says, folks need to stop looking to other countries for who they are. They are your neighbor, family, and friends. The government in D.C. and Israel are not the only ones able to do these things. Now, I agree with that, because if I or you or any other sportsman or veteran decided that they wanted to take out a target and they had a modicum of intelligence, they would be able to plan it and execute it and maybe even get away with it if they wanted.
Yeah, this was not a high security zone. You know, I mean, this was at a college. They had campus police, they had maybe some local police, and they had Charlie's security force. I mean, these guys are not doing Secret Service sweeps. They didn't have controlled entry checkpoints and everything else.
Right.
I mean, that old idiot got in there with a BB gun, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
I mean,
what we've seen a lot of times, though, is these mass shooters. They go in and they want to kill everybody. In this case, it was a little different. It was just Charlie they were after, and it was just one shot. So it's a little unique in the current paradigm of let's just kill all the Christian Republicans. It's a little different. It's a little easier because he only needs to take one shot and run away.
Well, who's to say that if he would have missed, he wouldn't have kept shooting and taken out all those additional people?
I don't know. Have you ever shot someone, man?
Nope.
You get kind of nervous. You know, your heart rate goes up. You're doing something illegal. You're going to get caught. It's dangerous. You could die. You know, all these thoughts, right? He very well could have missed. And I know some people use that as an excuse to this was a professional hit because he hit the target. You know, but he could have just been a good shot. He could have been numb. He could have been practiced. Who knows?
The reports that he was a hunter that I've seen come out, and I mean, 200 yards is not a hard shot to make.
200 yards is not a hard shot. Hitting the neck is a hard shot. We still don't know
if he could have been aiming for center mass and missed and accidentally hit him in the neck. I mean, we don't know any of these things.
Yeah, we could have been aiming center mass. He could have been aiming for the head, but he hit him in the neck, and so that's an interesting shot, right? But
sometimes you just get lucky too. You know, I mean.
Oh yeah, well, the last fruitcake with a big chin, who's also a transgender, shot up the Christian, or rather Catholic, service and killed 3 people. Am I correct?
I believe it was 3, yes.
Yeah, 3 children. How do you go into a church full of people with a high-capacity assault, super-duper AR-15 and only manage to kill 3 at close range?
I think that plays to what you were saying about the being nervous and the adrenaline and, you know, not being practiced. In that situation, you're up close and personal and looking your victims in the face. I think that's a little bit different than being 200 yards away looking through a scope and taking somebody out.
Yeah, it's always different. But what I just mean is this one guy, one shot, took him out. These other people show up and they shoot all over the place and barely hit any. It's just there's a different level. Now, he was raised by a Republican sheriff's deputy, I believe, or policeman. And he was the family's conservative, which the Democrats were using to say, see, it's a conservative Christian white man, even though he left his family behind, went to college, became a liberal fruitcake, is not a Republican, no longer a Christian. He hates Christians, which is allegedly why he took out Charlie. He was only interested in Charlie in this case. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's a targeted personal assassination versus an impersonal attack at a school or a church or a mall. It's interesting. Really got a lot of people worked up. Yeah. Thankfully,
that in and of itself does not make it some crazy international conspiracy thing. You know?
No.
And it drives me nuts when people grasp that hard at straws to find something. You know, let's look at the basics and let's see what comes out. Let that fog of war clear a little bit. You know, let's review that video. I mean, the surveillance video is not shot at 30 or 60 frames per second like we got here. I mean, it's shot at it could be shot at 6 frames per second or 3 frames per second, just because of the vast amount of data that would take. So I mean, you're going to get some grainy video and some jittery steps in between there. But like I said, there's one that came out, they zoomed in on it, they tried to improve it, and you could see that he threw the rifle off the roof. It was not in his backpack, it was not in his pants, he didn't disassemble it, and he didn't reassemble it. And everybody jumped to the conclusion of they didn't see it at first. In that video, it wasn't jumping out and glaring at them that he threw it off the roof. But you see him jump off the roof, and you see him carrying the fully assembled rifle, and then when he gets on the ground, he picks it up, and it is still a fully assembled rifle.
Yeah. What I will not do is I will not refuse to look at something or listen to an idea.
No, I will not either. But you know what? As soon as
it is frustrating,
I won't keep looking at it as if, oh, well, what about the disassembly? It's a moot point at this point. It's a waste of time to continue to talk about that. It's been disproven.
Well, no one, if no one heard it's been disproven until just now, then you did the world a service, or at least our small prepared mind world, because a lot of people haven't heard that. A lot of people didn't know that there's footage of him jumping off the roof. A lot of people didn't know that he was supposedly broke it down and put it together and did this and put it in a backpack and put it in his leg. A lot of people come here just to hear what is being said and to think for themselves.
But you know what? That again plays back to this whole clickbaiting and internet garbage, because every one of these people that came out within 5 minutes and said, oh, it was in his backpack and this and that and the other. You can't tell me they didn't see the video and it doesn't fit their narrative, so they're not pushing that video. It's hard to find. It's not all over like every other story that you saw all over X all day Friday and yesterday. I mean, it disputes everything they've been saying that they were so sure about, that it makes them look like idiots.
Right.
Because, they hung their hat on that whole narrative, and now all of a sudden it's disproven. Now, oh, well, we're not going to talk about that and make ourselves look stupid.
Right. Now, I have a little more information I'd like to put out. This has to do with credibility of witnesses and credibility of government. And I'll start with the Oklahoma City bombing. That was a bunch of horse shit, and a demolition and explosives expert, United States Air Force General retired, his name was Ben Parton, came out and explained how it was a fucking impossibility to use a low explosive nitro, fertilizer bomb to take down that fucking building with a blast wave. And he was dismissed, discredited, and pissed on by government and everyone else. Then with 9/11, we had engineers and architects for 9/11 truth. And then we also had airline pilots for truth. And all of them were dismissed and ignored because it did not fit the government narrative. So we have it, Mr. Human, on both sides. If the government says these architects and engineers have no idea what they're talking about, we shouldn't listen to them. It's like, well, why are we listening to the government who has an axe to grind and a story to sell versus listening to people who are qualified and experts?
Yes, well, that sends my cackles up, because if you are not allowed to present and have your situation considered, that is a big red flag.
Yes. Yeah.
And
it was interesting.
The physics of all that stuff has me questioning it as well, especially, with everything going on about the big asbestos remediation requirements and costs and this and that and the other, but I mean, it's probably not what everybody on this side is saying, and it's probably not what everybody on this side is saying. The truth probably lies somewhere in between.
Right. Yeah. So it's this is what exhausted me last week, at the end of the week, as well as over the weekend. So much so that I had to take a fucking nap today before the show. It has to do with just the intellectual, mental gymnastics of digesting what is real and what isn't, and then listening to fucking hyperbole and made up shit, and it'll wear you out. And
absolutely.
So, and it also tests my temperament and my patience, you know, because we're not, it is somewhere in between. There's a lot of lying going on, you know, and it's from people who have something to gain and someone who has something to hide. And it just sucks. Plus, at the same time, what makes this for me more difficult, Oliver, is the people who are willing to commit violence are even more willing to commit violence now. And the people that are willing to support that violence are even more willing to support that violence. And people who are willing to sponsor and fund the violence, they're more than willing. And the people who are gaining from this without doing a damn thing are stepping back because they have everything to gain. Someone tried blaming Russia and China for this. Have you heard that one?
Oh, I've heard all kinds of crazy things. Yeah. I mean, you also have the other factor, which is a lot of people that weren't even considering any kind of violence are now at the point where they are starting to consider that.
Yeah, there's a term going on.
You've drawn a whole nother faction into this whole thing.
Right. A lot of people are actually saying, I have now been radicalized. And I think that's dangerous for anyone to say, because you paint a target on yourself with the enemy, with law enforcement, with moderates, with other people who don't want to be around radicalization.
Right.
So,
well, I see we got some super chats stacking up here, so I'm going to pop off and then I'm going to let you get back on track with all.
Oh, no, it's all good stuff, man. I appreciate you coming on. Hey, by the way, we're almost up to 400 people live. Share the internet address at the top. We've got some more good stuff coming up. We're at the 90-minute mark, which means we've got 30 minutes to go. Any super chats out there, I'll stay on, make sure we read them and get through them, discuss them fully as much as they are good, bad, and different in the other. And again, we'll go back to really quickly. It was Mighty Mouse's girlfriend describing the assassination of Charlie Kirk as professional. Now, if we weigh that against the discussion I just had with Oliver, well, was he a professional in that the CIA, FBI hired him, or the Chinese, or could you say he's professional because he's experienced, practiced, was a hunter, etc.? Does that make you at the level of professional? You know, so it has the appearance of professional. All crazy stuff to discuss, and that's the whole point, is to discuss it freely, openly, share ideas, and make our own decisions. All right, Mr. Ooman, who's next? What do we got? We've got dump. Dior checking in with a 556 super chat, and he says, I'm not ratcheting down the rhetoric. The time for political discourse is over. Fuck around and find out, you stupid communists. Well, it sounds like Dior has been radicalized by the rhetoric and assassination of the left. And I think that's really where this leads, Dior. I would like you to be very careful out there. Don't let anyone accuse you of doing anything. Don't do anything stupid or illegal. But, right, so a left-wing radical who appears to be a man who likes to have sex with a transgender dude and live with him, shoots and kills Charlie Kirk in the throat. And then the left comes out, the political left, and accuses Trump and all of us of not ratcheting down the rhetoric. At the same time, they promote the rhetoric, promote the violence, call for more violence. They're not taking it down, but they want to criticize us for not ratcheting it down, for not bringing it down, for not calming the American people. You see how they play both sides. This is the socialist communist playbook. They want to talk out both sides of their neck. No bad pun intended. They want to talk out both sides of their neck. They want to tell their people, you keep doing what you're doing, we approve of it. And then they want to tell the conservative, how dare you not come out and call for peace? While in the next fucking sentence, they're like, I'm not necessarily saying don't do that again. The time for polite discourse is over. I want to stop on that one as well. Another great comment. Charlie Kirk was the epitome of polite discourse. The epitome of it. He was shot for it. He was called a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, a transphobe, an Islamophobe, a phobophobe, right? Democrats and Republicans, I have noted with you guys since Trump was elected that it started with a fissure, a crack. And I've talked about this for years, that this gulf between us is developed, and it's hard to talk to someone when they're so far away, right? This gulf opens up, you could jump it. Well, now you need a bridge. Well, now it's so wide you can't even get close to each other enough to talk. Polite discourse, as far as I'm concerned, is impossible to have with Democrats. I do, in my personal life, my very best when I find one of these people who's willing to talk, to be polite with them and ask them their opinions. Interesting stuff. But ultimately, it's going to come down to, at some point, the fuck around and find out, you stupid communist moment. Because the stupid communists are continuing to be violent. Same with the trans. Right? And we're being promised violence, folks, from the Mexican cartels, the drug cartels who are up here in our country. We're being promised violence from the Islamists. Once again, I would like you guys to listen, if you can find him. He's all over YouTube and the internet. Tom Luongo, who ties all of this into, folks, he does a very interesting and insightful job of tying the problems we have in the United States of America with the belief systems of the people running Europe, in particular England, and their connections to Israel through the royal families, and also their ability and desire to use Canada to screw with America. Now, I don't agree with everything Tom says, but I find it fascinating, intriguing, enlightening, and it helps me get a broader view of everything. Really crazy stuff. Thank you, Dior. Mr. Uman, where are we going next? Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Uh-oh. I think I'm missing a message here. Let's see. All right. We've got more super chats out there. We've got Dior with a 357. He gives the hashtag I am Charlie Kirk. This is the I am Spartacus moment that the Christian American right is picking up. In fact, a lot of people around the world are saying I am Charlie Kirk. And I think the question there is, why are people saying I am Charlie Kirk? By the way, I love the 357 as a round. It's great. But the I am Charlie Kirk. What was Charlie? Just at his fundamental basics. He was polite. He was soft-spoken. He was well thought out. He liked to think about his comments and responses. And that was, I think, what everyone's saying is, look, I want to be polite. I want to be nice. I want to be friendly. Right? But a second ago, Dior says, fuck around and find out, you stupid communist. Time for polite discourse is over. So you can't be Charlie Kirk and basically put the bird in the face of all the commies out there. Right? So it's like, well, I was Charlie Kirk, but now I'm radicalized, or I was radical, but now I'm Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to tone it down and talk my way through this. It's tricky business. It's tricky business. It could be that people are saying, I'm Charlie Kirk because now I'm going to use my brains and I'm going to think about everything instead of just picking a side and defending it without having the intellectual response and backup to talk about a particular topic with a degree of intelligence and accuracy. So it could be a lot of those things. We have the response for Charlie Kirk in the form of vigils and moments of silence are actually worldwide, which I haven't seen. I have not seen since the 9/11 attacks. And for some reason, this has really struck a huge nerve with so many people. Now, someone like Dior or myself or others right? We are very aware of the violent risk and threat, so we want to be prepared to use whatever level of force is necessary to protect ourselves and others. That's, so we're in this position. We're now in that room where even if you are Charlie Kirk, well, you better be Charlie Kirk with a peace, right? If you're going to have a discussion, you need to, it's just going to be tough, folks. This has really rattled a lot of nerves. And again, I recommend highly listen, look, learn, talk, but take time to put everything aside and decompress. Everything aside and decompress so that you can think for yourself, because you can get overexposed. And instead of being like Charlie Kirk, you end up being like a radicalized Alex Jones, right? A radicalized whatever, you name it. Anyways, yeah, a lot of people now feel that, they're part of what Charlie Kirk believed in because of their moral stance and their desire to wake people up, which is very similar to my style or belief, is I want to wake people up. I want them to become prepared, because this is more than just a question of transgenderism versus straight or Christianity versus other religions. This is more than just the American way versus other countries. This is about, what it means to be a human. And so then people see Charlie Kirk as, well, a very nice human. And he's now been killed, assassinated, because people were, they were using the same, shall we say, fault. They were listening to what other people said about Charlie Kirk and taking that at face value and then adopting it as their own belief system. That Charlie was a racist and a homophobe and a bigot and a white supremacist, and he may as well even been Hitler reborn. So they do that, and you see a lot of that in the on the street interviews with people. They say, "Do you like Charlie Kirk? Do you like Charlie Kirk?" And they hold the microphone up to the camera or the person, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't like Charlie Kirk. He was all these things, these bad names, right?" And then the guy says, "Well, can you give us an example of Charlie Kirk?" And they've got no example. So that's what I think we really need to be careful of, is getting sucked in. But yeah, be like Charlie Kirk. But I'll tell you what, I also want to be like General Patton. Right? I also want to be Smedley Butler. I also want to be Chesty Puller. I also want to be Andrew Jackson. I want to be George Washington. I want to be Thomas Jefferson. Right? I try to do all those things. It's hard, folks. Nothing's easy. And I think that's really cool that we have this platform, this ability to talk to each other and share ideas. But rather than push people to a cliff of extremism and violence, I think everyone's got the idea that I'm not pushing for that. I'm not wanting that. In any event, let us continue if we can. Mr. Uman. What do we got here? We got mineral water with $1 super chat donation. And do we have a question that follows? I guess we'll see in a second here. But again, the super chat donations pay the bills. But now we've got Dan, the man, Erickson with a $10 super chat here. He says, if one Republican pew-pewed a leftist, a Democrat, the mainstream media would have a political field day. Oh, but stop right there, Big Dan. I know what you're saying. They discovered that the shooter, who I think is a patsy for so many reasons, that he was used and abused, indoctrinated and brainwashed. Kind of like the last trans killer said, I was brainwashed into being a tranny and I don't want to be a tranny. And then he went and shot up a church full of children. So they saw that this was a white guy who came from a Republican family that liked guns, and they have pictures of the perpetrator and the guns, right, the suspect. And so they tried making that into a field day for them, the mainstream, lamestream, main dream media. And now they have to drop that. But that lie is out there, or that misinformation is out there as a consequence, right? There's going to be Democrats saying he's a Republican until they die, because they won't listen to anything that challenges their bias. Anyways, yeah, if one Republican hardcore Republican, were to do anything like this, of course, they'd have a field day and they would use it to push all manner of craziness. Well, that John, he talked dangerous talk. We should silence people. And that John used a gun, and so we need to get rid of guns. And John walked there on his legs, so we need to cut the legs off of all Republicans so they can't walk around. Anyways, Dan the Man continues, says the total story, like Paul Harvey and Walter Cronkite, needs to be told again. Both sides. Until that time, we will see. And yes, Dan, we shall see. We're going to have to see. At some point, we're going to end up potentially, possibly, as they continue to push us down this road, we're going to end up with more violence. Now, I'm going to point to a commentator I listened to over the weekend who said either politicians are completely incompetent, morons, fools, and they're accidentally causing America to be divided and become a violent, rhetorical hodgepodge of shit. Or they're doing this on purpose. And his conclusion was they're doing this on purpose. They are doing all of this on purpose. They're dividing. They're pitting group against group. They're pitting us all against each other, whether it's race, whether it's religion, belief systems. They're pitting us against each other, and they're doing it on purpose. In fact, they're exacerbating it. In America, they exacerbated it by bringing up people from south of the border, by bringing people from Africa, by bringing people from the Far East and the Near East and the Middle East. Fuck it. They brought them from everywhere to stick them here. The same with Europe. They're doing it intentionally. Now, who is trying to stop it is the question. Well, in Germany, they have the political party that's trying to stop the violence, trying to stop the integration of non-integrating peoples, aka these radical Muslims from third world shithole countries. And in the last 2 weeks, they've lost, 6 or 7 of their own members have been killed. This political party that wants to fix the problem, which some commentators have noticed is being done on purpose. So he asked the question without saying it, who benefits? Why? Well, the elites benefit because they get more power, more authority. They get their problems taken care of. You and I, as Christians, as Americans that love America, that point to the Constitution and our history and our tradition and say, that's a good country. They don't like us, so they need to demoralize us, degrade us, depopulate us, bring us down. And so, yeah, it's not the transgenders that are doing this, folks. It's the people that elevated transgenderism, that brainwashed transgenderism into thinking that they were being genocided, killed, and attacked. The transgenders are just a tool being used by those who want division, chaos, violence, and more government authority. That's how I see it. So, Dan, we will see. In the meantime, I'm an American. I have my rights. I'm well informed and well armed. I hope you are well prepared as well. Oh, man, who's up next? It says we got about 10 minutes on the clock. But as long as people want to discuss things. Mineral water. Yes, you wrote the Old Fart Survival Guide. It's on my bookshelf in the library. There it is. That that would be Ron. All right. Well, let's see if we can't put together a fun interview there, Mr. Mineral Water. The Old Fart Survival Guide. Good stuff. Good stuff. We're gonna have trouble with that alone, right? Interesting. I am now an old fart, I guess. I'm 55. Not so long ago, I was somewhere in the middle. Before that, I was a young guy. But now, the people in charge have figured out that they can divide us not only by religion or race. Well, Then there's income disequalities that they want to point out. The rich versus the poor, even the middle class versus the poor. And the young are being told and taught and brainwashed to hate the old. Hate the old farts. You know, when I grew up, and for all fucking history, through all cultures around the world, it used to be respect your elders. They've been through it all. They dealt with it all. They know a lot of shit. Listen to them. You don't have to obey them, but listen to them, and you just might learn something. Now, old farts are fucking stupid. Old farts are selfish and greedy. Oh, what a world we live in, folks. What a world we live in. But, I've been a prepper since I was 14. That's 1984 to you and me. Maybe even 1983. I realized there's a lot of problems in the world. I had no idea things could get this bad. I just thought back then that, people got mad and they just started shooting each other and you have a revolution. You get rid of the bad guys, just like that. No, it takes literally decades. It takes a human lifetime to get from freedom all the way to tyranny and then the reaction. It takes a human lifetime. For example, in 1725, Benjamin Franklin was writing in newspapers that he was tired of what the English were doing to them, that they were being mistreated. 50 fucking years later, 51, if you want to be really precise, in 1776, they wrote the Declaration of Independence. An entire lifetime between we don't like what's happening and we're going to do something, damn it. So here we are in my lifetime. Right? 1970 was when I was born. And we had the 60s, but then we had the race riots and the hippies and fucking anti-war protests and the no-nuke protests. And so my entire lifetime has been a systematic, steady increase in rhetoric, conflict, pushing us to where we are now. How close are we to revolution? I don't know. Just this weekend in Nepal, the people decided they're tired and sick and tired of their government, and they burned parliament, burned the president's quarters. I believe they killed the first lady of Nepal, the president, everyone that they could catch. They either killed or drugged through the streets or punished or whipped or tarred and feathered, whatever the hell they did. But Nepal's in a complete wreck. And then I believe they had a vote via an app on a phone. And the military has decided that that is a good enough form of election to establish a new regime. So I don't know what's going on over there, folks, but it's crazy. That to me sounds and smells more like a color revolution than anything else. Hands up. I don't want to start throwing too much more out there than that because it's Nepal, for Pete's sake. All right, man, let's take a shot at the at what we have left in the comment section, and it's Cottage Farm. Holy cow! We've got a celebratory moment here, my friends. A celebratory moment. Cottage Farm, my friend out there on the West Coast, an 18-year Scotch. I want to thank you for that, and I'd like to celebrate with you and everyone. I invite you to join Cottage Farm in celebrating that she is now on the way to being a grandmother. Cheers. Congratulations. That is an absolutely wonderful feeling. Wonderful feeling. What a way to celebrate that. That is great news. When I learned that I was going to be a grandfather, I was so happy. So happy for my son and his wife and the fact that he was stepping in and being a man and promoting all these good things, these great ideas. Grandchildren are amazing. Absolutely amazing. Cottage Farm, congratulations. Now, I will diametrically oppose this feeling to people who look at the creation of life as an inconvenience, as an unwanted expense, as a result of their irresponsible behavior and choices and decisions. I'm glad that you're going to be a grandma, and I can't wait to hear more and see more and everything else. That is just wonderful, wonderful news. And it should be celebrated with love and all the good things that come with it. It's part of life. The Kuma Matata, a new baby coming soon. Congratulations, Cottage Farm. Wonderful news. Thank you for the shot as well. I've been needing that. Woo! It's Sunday Night Live, folks. It's the zoo. You never know what's going to happen. Hey, man, what are we going to talk about next? We've got bump, William Hallman checking in with a 556 super chat. And he says, hey, John, I took an Into Tonight Vision class last night. Walking around on uneven ground using night vision is extremely difficult. Train. Aha. Yes, indeed. Everything that could be a prepping / self-defense, national defense tool, you need to practice. I frequently talk about the need to practice with a handgun or rifle or shotgun to become proficient, feel comfortable, understand its use. But yeah, night vision really is something interesting. When I was a jarhead, the night vision you'd put on, you take off and you'd see red spots. It was a different kind of night vision. But it's anything that is not usual takes practice, training. And it sounds like you took a class. Intro to night vision class. Yeah, walking around is difficult. I remember as a kid, probably second or third grade, watching a film about physiology, how our brains work. And what they did is they put this set of goggles on this guy. And what it did was it flipped the world upside down. Literally, it crossed between the goggles on the eyes, the vision of the world, and the guy saw everything upside down. After a short while of wearing it constantly, his brain did something miraculous. It took the upside down image and flipped it back. In other words, the mind can be trained to deal with all manner of obstacle. So practice. Kind of like when I tell and have instructed people with firearms. I said, you need to look at 3 things. And they're like, how can I look at 3 things at once? I go, it takes practice. What am I looking at? Well, you have to know your target. There's one thing you got to look at, and it's far away. Up close, you've got 2 things. You've got a rear sight and a front sight. I go, what do you think you should be looking at most clearly? And they go, you're supposed to look at your target most clearly. No, that's wrong. Okay, I need to look at my blades, right? And then put the front sight in the middle. And so I need to focus on the back ones. No, that's incorrect. The one thing you want is the front sight tip. That's what you're supposed to have clear. Everything else is going to be a little bit fuzzy. Once again, you can train your mind to do that. And it's incredible how good you can get at doing something. So yes, night vision, if you have it, great tool to have. If you need to wear it on your head and walk about because, well, there's no street lights. Yeah, SHTF. The sun's down, of course. It's dark, right? And no moon, right? It's a very good tool to have, William, and congratulations on procuring some. A very valuable tool because, well, you have approximately 12 hours every day that your vision is going to be obscured, compromised because of darkness. Right? You can't just call time out and go, okay, everyone, we're done fighting and shooting and trying to kill each other. It's not, no. Right? In fact, attacking under cover of darkness gives you an element of surprise, allows you to get closer to the target. It allows you to, right, win. So having night vision is just an incredibly powerful tool. And it also helps you see movement at a distance. Even at night with full moonlight, you'll be able to see, but it's still affected, right? But if you have night vision, whoo, you can see the world. Thank you, William. Mr. Uman, where are we going next? We've got, holy bananas, Robin G back. back. Here we go with another, well, super chat donation of $50. Kapow means I get another scotch. And I got to tell you, folks, the 18 is so damn smooth. I went up to a 21 year a couple of times. At a Glenn Fiddick 21 year once, and Glenn Farkas 21 year scotch. Extremely good also, but the jump to 18, whew, one of the most notable. Oh, Semper Fi, Robin G, and thank you. She says, John, the weapon was down his pants leg until he got up on the roof. Rewatch the video of him jumping off the roof. You can clearly see in slow motion speed that he had his rifle in a wrap. No time to take it apart to Charlie Kirk. I tell you, the slow motion speed. One of the first things I did was took the up close and very up close version of Charlie getting shot and did a frame by frame and screenshot and blow it up and look closely, trying to figure things out. And by doing that, I ended up coming up with 3 different theories as to what happened. And that's with a close-up, 30 frames a second, super clear. The weapon was down his pants leg until he got up on the roof. I'll rewatch the video. I promise I'll rewatch the video. In fact, because I made fun of it and called it the Bigfoot video, and it was unclear and fuzzy, I'm hoping that there's more videos of that. I did see another video from another angle, which looked down at where Charlie Kirk was, which looked over at the building where the alleged sniper was at. And you could see something flying through the air. Looked like a drone to me. And they're like, there were no drones. I'm like, but I just saw what appears to be a drone. Did not look like a bird. Birds tend to flap wings. You know what I'm saying? This one, it just came in. So I'm hoping there's more video that can be released, but I don't know if we're going to get it. And after several days, I doubt we're going to get it because, as Uman said, if you've got news, information, video, you are sitting on a potential, from a gold mine to at least a free hamburger by the time you get all the clickbait dollars from it. So I think we're not going to see anything more clear than what's out there, but I'll take a peek. I'm going to take a peek. Hopefully we get more questions answered than questions raised. I don't like any of this, folks. By the way, this pisses me off that it happened. Right. I could see. I don't agree with, nor do I want to see it, but I could believe that these leftists would be crazy enough to go after Alex Jones because he's such a loud firebrand, right? He attracts attention. He wants that. I could see that, but it just pisses me off that they went after Charlie Kirk in this instance and succeeded. But what they accomplished was getting America's attention, getting the world's attention. Whew, crazy business. Okay, Mr. Uman, we've crossed the 2-hour mark. We're right at 375 people live. And Buddy and Bigfoot with a $5 super chat donation. Thank you, Buddy. And I tell you, when I tell people I've had Bigfoot experiences with an S, having run into Bigfoot 1, 2, 3 different times at the original location, and then 4 the next year, then 5, and about 6 times total. Yeah, once I start giving them what happened, they're like, holy shit, I guess that's real. Huh? Well, they may or may not believe me, but, Bigfoot story. All right, thank you, Buddy. Let's move on, Mr. Uman. I shall not dally past the 2-hour mark too much. And it's Kimber with a $10 super sticker. That may be the biggest super sticker I've ever gotten. Thank you, Kimber. And I think Kimbers are actually very good weapons. I just happen to know about them as well. I bought a couple in my life, a 45 ACP and a 357 in stainless. I bought those Kimbers in times past. All right, let's move on, Mr. Uman. And we got Cyber Hana with a $20 super chat donation. And she writes that this is not the world I was born into. I don't think this is the world you deserve. I know this is not the world you want. None of us asked for this as far as I know. But yeah, the world has definitely changed. I believe Cyber Hana, folks, is about my age. 50, 55-ish, right? And thank you for the letter also that you wrote explaining to me what the heck's going on in your world. And thank you for allowing me to respond and tell you what's going on in my world, the difficulties, the pain and suffering, etc., Cyber Hana. And keep your chin up. Keep fighting hard. Stand for what's right or do not stand at all. And I've shared that story, and maybe I'll share it in the future. Thank you so much, Cyber Hana. The world was not the world that I was born into. Indeed. I was born into a crazy world in the 1970s where women wore no bras and fishnet shirts. I got some memories, folks. I was born into a world where the action hero of the time was, well, James Bond. He was the first action hero. I was born into a world where, well, everyone celebrated the 4th of July and they loved America. Nobody claimed to not love America. Nobody said death to America. So it's weird. It's strange. It's bizarre. And it literally hurts my heart to see all of this hatred out here, especially hatred for good things. Let us continue, if we shall. Mr. Uman, we've got mineral water with a $10 super chat donation. She says, I want to do a book giveaway. That'd be great. I'd love that. Let's, like I said, let's set up and we'll have a couple of pre-conversations to kind of get to know each other. I think that is really beneficial with respect to doing a show. Uman and I have known each other for years. So, you know, we're really good at talking and reading each other's thoughts and having some fun with it and throwing out baseballs that hit out of the park and throw some curveballs at each other. Fun stuff. But yeah, we'll have to work on that there, Ron. Thank you again, Mr. Uman, as we plow on through this Sunday Night Live. Hey, it's Davey D. Holy bananas. $35.70 super chat to $357.70. And that was the first handgun I bought. First handgun I bought, Smith & Wesson model 686, 6-inch barrel, adjustable silhouette sights front and rear, a very smooth, light, and crisp trigger, and great stuff. Anyways, he says, one for the road. Chatted, I worked in a hangar next to ICE transportation. 3 federal 737s loaded daily. Where are they going? Well, Davey D, I don't know where they're going. If I knew, I would not say, because I would not want to give the bad guys a chance to run away. But they are talking on sending immigrations and customs enforcement to Tennessee. They're talking about sending them back to the West Coast. They're talking about, I think they're now engaged in a misdirection scheme so that illegals everywhere don't know where they're going. And their supporters everywhere don't know where they're going. In fact, I really approved of the use of the ICE app that was created out there, which is supposed to allow left-wing lunatics to notify illegals where ICE was. And so a bunch of Republicans downloaded the app and then said, oh my gosh, they're at First Street and Pine Avenue at the Lowe's or Home Depot. And that store would clear out because whoever had the app, right, they're using it. So this is a spy versus spy versus spy versus spy game. Anyways, 3 737s loaded with federal agents. That's probably close. Somewhere between 400 and 500 people. And for all we know, they're going to 3 different places. In any event, I'm glad that they're doing their jobs, folks. I want this country safe. I want it to be back to where it was again, where it seems more like the country I was born with. So it feels more like 1950s Americana. When I was a kid in the 70s and then the 1980s, Norman Rockwell His posters were very popular. Very good, man. Very popular. Norman Rockwell, Americana, right? It showed Americans across the country, urban, rural, whatever, being Americans, and you just had to love it. It's kind of like Thomas Kincaid artwork about Christmas. It just seems to it just comes out of it. In any event, that's the world I'd love to have back. But between now and then, we've got a lot of shit hitting the fan. Ooh, man, who's next on the Prepared Mind channel? We've got Bump, Blue Cord Devil with a $50 super chat donation. I'll tell you what, I'm going to enjoy this one probably all the way top to bottom. Got my bottle of Glenfiddich here. 18-year Scotch. And I want to thank everybody, big and small, short and tall, old and young, black and white. If you love America, you love freedom, you love the Constitution, and you love the fact that, well, we've got a fighting chance. And here's to you all, and here's to you, Blue Cord Devil. I'll go over your message in a moment. Semper Fi to you. Blue Cord Devil says, rest in peace, Charlie. Peace and prayers to John, Jolene, Uman, and everyone else. Watch your six. Stay calm. Stay armed. Here's to a picture of Glenn Levitt 18. Here's to a shot of it. I got to tell you, when you see things are bad, it hurts. You know, I didn't know Charlie. I never talked to Charlie, but people that met Charlie, they felt that he changed their life. There's left-wing people, transgender people that said they talked to Charlie, they met Charlie, they debated Charlie, they listened to Charlie, in some cases for years. And some people converted to Christianity or became better Christians. Some people decided to give up their left-wing lunacy, and they literally saw the light of some sort. And that's a wonderful thing, and that's been taken from us. You know, in our personal lives, like Cottage Farm, she has new life coming into her life, and that inspires us. And then when we lose people that are important to us, even, you know, they don't have to be famous like Charlie, it affects us. You know, I lost both my father and my stepfather in the last several years. Very painful. You know, when you hear about somebody that you know that's been hurt, right, it hurts you. In this case, Charlie was a bit of a national treasure, though no one really thought of him as a national treasure because he didn't live a full life, because it was taken from him. Right? But we have a lot of national treasures out there, folks. And I believe a lot of you will never be given credit for, will never be appreciated as the treasures that you are. But I want you to know that I think we all have that in us. We all have that in us to be good, to make a difference, to stand up for what's right, to promote and celebrate goodness, to condemn what is wrong, try to make amends for our shortfalls, try to lift everyone else up as high as we can. And I think that was a big part of what America was. And I would love to see us return to that. And those last few scotches are making me very warm. And are going to make me sentimental, which is a quality of mine that one of my sons used to criticize me for. But I think it keeps me grounded and level to be sentimental, to have empathy, you know, to see what's going on around us, and to be willing to fight for what's right. And I'm counting on all of you to do the same thing. First and foremost, you've got to be prepared and have all those items. We've got Lit Gaming checking in with a $9.99 super chat donation. And he says, have you seen the documentary Europa? The final battle, that's what black-pilled me and my family. It gives a good perspective on Agenda 2030. Well, I have not watched the entire documentary Europa. I just heard about it last week, or it came back up in my life last week. And I spent a little time looking it up and was going to spend more time looking at it this weekend. And then the Charlie Kirk thing happened and completely took it off my plate. But I think that everybody needs to look it up. Europa. I also think that people need to watch the movie Elysium, because it's about what the elites want out of this world. And it shows what a group of determined people can do to try to get it back. It shows you what those are willing to do for a paycheck and hurt others. They don't care. There's a lot of great movies that show us the world we live in, folks, and the world that we want to avoid. You know, it's usually the ones like this dystopian movies and documentaries, etc., that upset us and get our attention. And kind of like the movie Braveheart or the movie The Patriot. You know, or you know, it's usually these great tragedies that wake people up and get their attention. I recommend watching Europa, folks, or at least finding out about it. And then compare everything that I've said, everything that you read and hear. Look at everything with a critical eye. Put it through your thought processes. Don't let yourself be distracted. Don't let yourself be deceived. Right? And, you know, just the advice I want to give is keep being the good people that I know you are. But never, ever, ever expect anyone else, right, to live by the same standards you have for yourself, because you will be taken advantage of, because that's what the bad guys are looking for, opportunity to hurt us. And that's what we're seeing in a world full of greedy, selfish bastards. That's exactly what is happening. So hold on to what you know is dear, right, moral, decent, and correct. And I love you all, and I'll see you 0 Dark 30 tomorrow.